Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our seminar series in Industrial Engineering and Management Systems. I'm Chuck Riley. I'm going to be participating in this seminar this morning for a little bit, but it's really my pleasure this morning to introduce Dr. Euiho from Korea, who has been at UCF this past year on his sabbatical from Post-Tech, the Pohang University of Science and Technology in Korea. His expertise is in management information systems and knowledge management, management of technology, and that's what he came here to do, and he's very graciously included me in some of his research. And I've stepped outside my comfort zone a little bit. I'm learning some new things. So all the tough questions that you have are directed to Dr. Suh, but I'll be participating a little bit later on. We just want to welcome him and thank him so much for being here this year.
It is a pleasure to have her, stay here for 1 year at University of Florida. I have many relationships with the UCF, and one of my friends graduated this university a long time ago, and also the Professor Carol Sanders. She has been to Korea, I think, a couple of times. She's very well known in MIS, my area, MIS, also very well known in Korea too. And I'm studying using her textbook starting September. And when I come back to Korea next month, I'll probably use her textbook. Also, Dr. Riley is a close friend of one of my friends who is at the naval faculty at Naval Postgraduate School, Dr. Kang Gi-bong. He's also my high school friend, for 40 years. So, in many ways, I relate to UCF. I like UCF. First of all, this is a knowledge management with the communities of practice. Let me introduce the background a little bit. My university was founded in 1986 by POSCO. Okay. So, POSCO is one of the largest, top 5 in the world in terms of production capacity and the sales, annual sales. The university invested a lot of money to establish what they call it research-oriented university. Normally in Korea, like a top university, traditional top university, Seoul National University, like the University of Tokyo, and in Japan, and University of Taiwan in Taiwan, like that. The top university, when I was there as a student, like 40 or 35 years ago, the teaching load like for 5-6 courses a year like that. But this university's new idea is like asking only 2-3 courses a year. So a little bit propaganda. Okay. So content is post-mid lab overview and theoretical background of COP and POSCO COP. So we investigate POSCO COP very intensely. And then Dr. Riley is going to cover comparative studies, IBM, GM, 3M. We visited in the middle of June. Dr. Riley and I went to IBM in Atlanta and GM in Detroit, 3M in the Minneapolis. And then he came back to Orlando. I continued to go to San Jose to visit the Google. I was very excited in seeing Google, where the all 9,000 employees have a free lunch and free dinners. But that was very impressive. And then conclusion and future direction. So he's going to cover comparative studies, and I'm going to cover conclusion part. Okay, let me, this is a little bit introducing my laboratory. Actually, I got my master's degree in engineering economic systems, Stanford 82-87, PhD in MIS in School of Business. That time, engineering economic system, there are 3 departments: engineering economics, operations research, industrial engineering. Now they are merged together, only industrial engineering. And I was on the faculty of Oklahoma State University, and then I went back to Korea in 1989. And then we established a post-tech strategy management information and technology laboratory there. So next year is the 20th anniversary. Right now we have 11 PhD master candidates. In any given time, we have 10 to 15 graduate students. And alumni in 19 years, there are 66 PhD MS degrees have been awarded. And job placement is university faculty, Gyeongbuk National University and Gyeongsang University, Hallyu University, some Korean universities, and CEOs and CIOs. Well, their salaries are more than mine. Right? So, so actually, they pay for my golf rounding, golf rounding. So in Korea, you believe or not, so you have to pay $200 to play golf. So here only $20, $30 here in summer and $45, $50 in winter. But Korea, most expensive country in the world. Even Japan is cheaper. So, and some consultants, McKinsey, Arthur Anderson, PwC, and some research institutions, SDSDI, KT, Korea Telecom, LG, the LG is popular, that there's a POSCO, some companies here. Okay, so they're good. They are doing pretty well right now. Okay. Our research areas there are three major research areas: strategy information system, strategy user of information system, strategy business system, business process innovation, and knowledge management, strategic knowledge management, and community practice management, and technology management, strategy user of technology development, technology innovation. So these three areas are typical areas in our research areas. Performance industry 1999 to 2008, we have 33 industry government projects in the field. I think this is the, okay, this is okay. The 33 industry government projects, and including this one, this POSCO, this a little bit, this is our kind of $100,000 project, this one. 85 international journals and proceedings and 150. This is easy too, so they don't count this number too much in journals and proceedings. 5 books including in Korean in 2007. Okay, let me give you a research history a little bit. First 7 years we concentrated on DSS, GDSS, EIS, model management, digital support system. So international policy, we publish articles in digital support system, international journal information, and blah blah like that. So we concentrated for 7 years. So I was president of EIS, the Decision Support System Association in Korea. So then gradually we evolved, changed our areas a little bit. Human approach, expert system, AHD, analytical process, hierarchical process in R&D. Then 1996 to 2016, last 10 years we were more interested in KM, knowledge flow. And the motivation is 1996, the POSCO gave money to us to feasibility study of KM. That time I came to the United States of Being. I started working on many IBM and things. So they started the KM gradually. So we got some. And then a little bit of CRM, a little bit of ubiquitous, which are not major part right now. So 2000 future, we're going to concentrate community practices, SIS, and like that. We used to publish the MI Scholar, Carol Sanders was editor-in-chief in the last 3 years, and we didn't get through. So we, I think that's the top journal. So I mean, we published some our papers in different journals like this. Okay, importance of COP in KM. Constructing ability of organization without changing function. This is very important. So you can construct ability of organization without changing functional structure. So because knowledge is continuing asset. I think when we visited 3M, I think the vice president of 3M told us that one day, I think several years ago, one day 1,500 manpower is like that, right? So for example, 50 people, 10 year, each person has 10 year experience. That means a 500 year experience, right? So I think one day, 1,500 year experience gone, which means roughly speaking, 50 people gone, each people has a 30 experience, for example. Well, number is not correct, I'm just, my memory is poor. But what happened is, they shut down whole factory. They had to shut down whole factory. Then 3M realized that how knowledge management is so important, because they don't have knowledge management, they didn't have it, and then people gone, and then factory must be shut down. And the sharing, access to knowledge, execution through common passion, relations, rules, and methods. Okay, and the COP knowledge management, subsystem of KM, and a core strategy to construct learning organization, part of group learning. So there's COP and process group team action. So use of knowledge capital is a problem solving, quality control, change, innovation, and learning. And then this is control. This is use and control. This is a Wenger from 2002, relationship between KM and COP as a community practice, formal development. So, people wonder that what's the difference between just clubs and the community COP. I mean, you have a club, club for bingo, club for like fishing, like that, right? So what's the difference there? Community practice and formal departments like industrial engineering department, MIS department, operational team, and project teams, communities of interest, informal networks. So this is a table from the Wenger in 2002. So what's the purpose and what who belongs? How clear are the boundaries? How holds them together? How long do they last together? I'm going to send you this materials if you want to even send this material to you. So just send an email to me or maybe Dr. Riley so that we can send this material to you. So we're not going to cover everything, but let me look at this part. The communities of practice to create, expand, and exchange knowledge and to develop individual capabilities. That's the purpose. And then who belongs? Self-selection based on expertise or passion for topic. Okay. And how clear are the boundary forging? It's not very clear, it's clear forging, and forge them together, passion, devotion, specificity, and identification as a member. How long they last? They evolve and organically last as long as there is relevance to the topic and the value and interest in learning together. Okay? So there are many controversial discussion about this, and we're gonna cover that in the conclusion part. What kind of issues are here, research issues are here, and what kind of PhD thesis topics are here. Okay? So, definitions of future COP. The initial stage, stage 1991, the situated learning, informal form of groups who share common works, and group of people informally bound together by sharing expertise and passion for common works. The definition of knowledge sharing activity perspective, a set of individuals who is united by practices, and there are different definitions. Group of people who share concerns, problems, and passion about specific topic, cultivate their knowledge and expertise. And knowledge organization for acquiring, sharing, spirit of mutual based on social capital. So basically in KM, every individual generating knowledge, okay? But in a COP is a collectively becomes a group. So you can regard the COP as an individual. I mean, they collectively generate knowledge. They can not generate the knowledge, store the knowledge under the KM. So features of COP, the situated learning and learning on the situation, and knowledge sharing and community learning, and then practice-centered organization, creating knowledge through sharing knowledge in common domain, social learning system for members by participating in activity, and knowledge management strategy. This is a COP is a kind of not KM strategy, and then real problem solving community. So this is the development of a COP COP, the potential people are face similar situation without benefit of shared practice, and then coalescing, members come together and recognize their potential, and active, members engage in development practice, and dispersed, members no longer engage very intensely, but the community is still alive as first and the central knowledge, memorable, community no longer central, but people still remember as a single part of their identity. So there is a life cycle of COP. COP is born, and then the peak, and then going down. So there are two ways to killing COP. It's the natural deaths. COP has a life cycle. The other one is even though they are very active from the the organization point of view, if it is no longer needed, probably they can kill artificially. So there are two ways of dying here. Post-COP, well, actually, quickly, because there is no data here, but U.S. Steel is #1 steel company in USA, and the Nippon Steel is #1 in Japan, and Boshan Steel in Shanghai is #1 in China, and Mittal is an Indian company, is #1 in the world, in fact. So, world consumption is 1.2 billion tons. Okay, steel consumption. World total steel consumption is 1.2 billion. No, okay, 1.2 billion tons, and 300 million tons is produced by China. Okay, so I think as a single country, probably China is #1. But as a single company, Mittal is #1. I think. Korea, South Korea, produce around 70 million tons. I think okay, around 60 or 70 million tons in the POSCO is covering around 65% of Korean production. Okay? So their production capacity right now 38 million tons like that. Okay, out of 60 or 70 million tons of South Korea's total production. So as a single company, POSCO probably #2, #3. It's bigger than Boshan in Shanghai. So annual sales like $20 billion. This year, I think they will hit $25 billion. I mean, this year. That's the same amount as when we finished Minneapolis 3M. 3M is selling $20 billion every year. Amazingly, they are selling 3M. You know those 3M understanding like a Scotch tape like that. 3M selling $2 billion in China, $2 billion, $1 billion in Korea. So Asian market is very big, So right now, so Asian market is incredible because I heard that yesterday Bennigan's is shutting down. 300 Bennigan restaurants is shutting down. This USA. In Korean newspaper, Bennigan's in Korea. I think there are 20 restaurants there. It's one of the most lucrative business there. So they say we are not going to shut down. Right? So even though you shut down, we will shut down. Okay. So as a scholar, I recommend you to focus on Asian market. I mean, it's it's booming. So background status. Need for infrastructure where enterprise-wide activities linking work, innovation, and learning. Need to create the core knowledge of the company and make it a company asset. Need to share know-how, experience, and knowledge. So that's background. This is the background of adopting KM and COP in POSCO. And POSCO COP, if you look at the history, activation of the COP until December 3 years ago, capability enhancement, lifelong practice. But then change the job practice COP. So more like a hobby style COP, and then more like a job oriented COP, then you need more strategic oriented COP. That's the history. It's more like a hobby oriented, and then job oriented, more technical and more professional, and then more strategic oriented. How is right now the situation is more innovation oriented, more strategic oriented. So this is a SIG type, so SIG, special interest group type COP, job practice COP, and strategic COP. That's the situation. Right now is COP is a big part. I'm going to show that. Right now, as of October 2007, there is 1,620 COPs in POSCO. Number of participants is 78,600 persons, which means that 4.5 COP per person. So number of employees like 17,000 right now. 17,000. There are two big factories in one Pohang and one Gwangju, Gwangyang. And Pohang is the city I live in. And so that each person participates 4.5 COP right now. So this is the data. There is one interesting fact, observation here is the number is dropping. The reason is the number of COPs with insufficient active refinement. So they got rid of the COPs which are not very active. So that's why number drops a little bit. Okay. Operating multi-purpose COPs and burden-free activities and job practice, Six Sigma, fostering fundamental lifelong practice improvement. Actually, Six Sigma, if you look at post-course innovation activity, every stage I was involved in one way or another. And the early 90s, digital support system. They developed executive information system. I was involved there. And then they gradually turned their eye to KM, knowledge management. And then before knowledge management, what they did is re-engineering. Michael Hammer is 1990, 7, 8 years ago. I'm really like a lot of lectures in Michael Hammer. Michael Hammer came only once to South Korea. I think he gave 2 hours and he collected $200,000. Believe it or not. Only 2-hour lecture in Seoul. I think that I was there like 800 people. Okay? Everybody pay like $1,000 like that. So 1992 through 1996, I think 3,000 South Korean companies went through re-engineering process. Then ERP, right? So POSCO was an exception. POSCO didn't go through that way. And then since 5-7 years ago, they Six Sigma is a popular name there. General Electric and General Motors and everything. So Six Sigma was so popular. And then, last 3-4 years, COP. So COP is a kind of reinforcing Six Sigma. Six Sigma is reinforcing COP in that sense. So emphasis on nurturing COP leaders. Recognize the nurturing COP leaders as the key factor through analyzing the relationship between COP leader activity and COP activation level. This is the obvious diagram. This is not. If activity of a leader is going up, level of COP is going up too. Okay, so this diagram shows that importance of leadership. So Open POSCO came leader training program 4 times a year, and the COP leader workshop 15 times in Pohang, Gwangyang, and Seoul. Benchmarking of other companies' COP cases 4 times, and operating the COP Leaders Club 2005, the number of members of 450 sharing excellent cases starting from interaction. Okay. Contributing to generation business outcomes through the activation of COP. This is from the questionnaire to the people that why COP is so important. They say enhancement of capability, enhancement of business productivity, practice speed of beginners, like that. So obviously, these 93% of people answer that it is very beneficial to business implementation. Establish as a core for innovation activity supporting the positive cycle of problem recognition, implementation, improvement, compliance with standards. So basically, innovation is the key word in the last 15-20 years in the POSCO. And then for innovation, they did process innovation, which is business process re-engineering. microhammer theories, and they adopted the ERP, the Oracle ERP package. And then they actually, for a short period of time, 1996 to 1998, they adopted like a learning organization concept, and then KM, and then Six Sigma. Continuing themes innovation. Okay, so this is only COP is only a tool or only a concept for supporting their innovation activities. So. The strengthening fraternity, regaining trust, and creating a pleasant and lively work environment. Okay. So that's crazy about work. It's a Doma Daily newspaper a couple of years ago, the newspaper. Because POSCO is not producing customer-oriented product at all, so they don't have any product advertisement at all, but they only put the image advertisement here. A lot of newspaper, obviously, everywhere is true that the newspaper press the postcode, give advertisement for us, So that's why they give advertisement, be periodically to each newspaper. So, we make the improvement 24 hours a day. COP active procedure at POSCO, discovering wasteful part, and then online, offline discussion, and selecting the practical subject, and executing the practical subject. This is probably final part, okay? This is the final part. The evaluation of POSCO as an large corporation. Okay, this is the result. They got MAKE award. MAKE stands for most admirable large enterprise. This award is very famous. Worldwide, there's an Asian MAKE award too. So the companies who visited, 3M, GM, IBM, Google, those are the recipients of MAKE award. And possibly we are planning to go to BBC and BP in the UK, and some other German companies like Bosch, like that, maybe in Middle East with Dr. Riley again. So there's a grand prize, Booz Allen, KM grand prize. So it's a little bit pride of POSCO in benchmarking. Actually, 184 organizations visited POSCO for KM benchmarking. So, obviously POSCO is the leader in KM, but the reason they gave this project to us is because they try to identify their problems and if there's any things they can learn from other companies. So that's it, and then I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. So you want to put your file?
Okay, thank you. Well, you really need to feel sorry for Dr. Suck. He's had to, work with me a little bit over the last year, and as I look at some of the things that I've learned about knowledge management and communities of practice over the last year, I was the worst candidate you could pick to get involved in this. So some of the things that I've learned about how people are communicating with each other through communities of practice and knowledge management and so on. I'm not the right guy. There was a time a few years ago I was invited to go to Valencia Community College. They were opening a special program in technology for students. And I got to tell them that when I got there, I said, again, I'm the worst person you could pick. Because at that time, I said, I want to be the last person on this planet to own a cell phone. And I didn't make it. And there's some other things that I found out. I have found one person that does not have a cell phone. I found out that there are other things that people are doing that I'm still behind. Even though I got a cell phone now, I don't know how to use it. I know how to answer it, but I don't know how to do the alarm or anything like that. So my sympathies to you having to put up with me. But I'll talk a little bit about the the trip that we made in June. What we did is we went and visited companies. I was able to visit 3 companies, Dr. Suh and a couple other gentlemen from Korea. There's a gentleman from POSCO, the steel company, Mr. Chung, who was with us, and then one of Dr. Suh's graduate students, Mr. Huang, went with us also. And what we wanted to do was investigate what's going on in knowledge management, communities of practice in the United States, so that what's going on in the U.S. could be compared with the experience that Dr. Suh and his colleagues have seen in Korea. And we want to build relationships and begin to share some of the information that is available in the U.S. and the information is available in Korea as well. We went in June. The dates there are actually for the people that had to leave Korea and come back to Korea. I wasn't committed to this trip quite that much. I was gone for 4 days. We went and visited IBM in Atlanta, and that was kind of an interesting experience. We learned a lot about these companies just when we see what kind of places you go and talk to these folks. The building we went to in Atlanta seemed like, this gorgeous, big building, but inside it looked like all there were conference rooms. That it's just a building where people come to have meetings. So there was a lady that, Deborah Donegan, that met with us. She doesn't even come there all the time. Frankly, she didn't know her way around the building. So we kind of got to help her learn her way around. But it was very, very unique to see that. We went to General Motors in Detroit. We went to the headquarters building down in the Renaissance Center downtown, and also went to the Tech Center in Warren, Michigan as well. So we met with Dr. Sammy at headquarters, and then Steve Weineke at the Tech Center. And he's a guy that's really involved in the knowledge management that General Motors is working on. Then last day I was there, we were in St. Paul at 3M, another very, very interesting place. 3M makes 55,000 products. Now imagine having to manage the knowledge for 55,000 products. And they're not done. They want more. I used to think that I wish I'd had the patent on Gatorade. And I still wish that. But the best one is Post-it notes. I mean, oh my goodness, those things are all over the place. But they're doing well. And then the rest of the team went and spent a day with Google out in San Jose. So I'll tell you about some of the things that we saw. This is at IBM, some of the things that we learned. IBM has something that they call ThinkPlace. And this is just a virtual place where employees can upload, search, and evaluate ideas. People can contribute, they can share, and so on. So it's kind of a big community. They have also World Jam with more than 50,000 members, 6,000 ideas. What they're trying to do is work together, get those 50,000 members to come up with what they're calling collective intelligence. IBM sees the purpose of knowledge management and communities of practice as an opportunity to combine personal values and business values so that they can build a learning organization. That's what they're really trying to do, is build a learning organization. And they say, Dept Donegan told us that learning is really the main activity for their communities of practice. That's what it's all about. They're very serious, very analytical about the communities of practice that they have. They've got a model that they use, a 5-level model for community development and evaluation. And here are the different levels that they have: potential, building, engaged, active, and adaptive. And I think if you remember Dr. Suh's slide about the growth of COP, that's going to correspond to that chart that he had quite well. And as these communities of practice change over time, there are new members that join, there are people that roll off, the focus may change a little bit, they can move back and forth from level to level, but that's kind of how they're going to keep track of these things. And then they're trying to build what they call an on-demand workplace. If I need to know something, there ought to be a way that I can find out about it. They're going to combine information both inside and outside the firm. We're looking at business applications, business processes, and collaboration, all with the idea that they're going to create an integrated workplace in a learning organization. If we look at the status of knowledge management at IBM, they're promoting the methods of knowledge sharing. They do a lot of internal searches. They use the Lotus Notes search engine to do internal searches. They also do external searches. They'll use Wiki. There's a Beehive website they use, and something, I don't remember what it was all about, but they called it Fringe that they're using. So what each of these organizations, again, is a little bit different. Everybody's doing a lot of things internally. IBM is looking outside, trying to get information, but they're not so much communicating with the outside. They're kind of just receiving information. They deal with security a little bit. The people in their communities of practice are not supposed to upload any sensitive information. And IBM's going to be dealing with a lot of software. I mean, they've got to be careful about codes and so on that they might get their hands on. But other than the restrictions on uploading sensitive information, there really are no other regulations on their communities of practice. The way IBM views knowledge management and communities of practice, that communities of practice is kind of the high level, and then knowledge management is underneath those the communities of practice. And we'll see other organizations view this a little bit differently. And that's one of the things for somebody from the outside coming in, trying to understand what's the relationship between knowledge management and communities of practice. Well, different people say it's organized differently. Some people, the overarching organization is the communities of practice. Other places it's knowledge management. So that's still one of the things that I haven't fully resolved for myself. At IBM, they have between 150 and 180 communities of practice that are very, very active right now. There are 800 communities of practice that have been officially formed. So about 20% of those are pretty active. Between 20 and 25% are pretty active. And some of these communities of practice are very large. IBM, even though they got this beautiful building, it's to a large extent a virtual organization. They do a lot of things remotely. There's a lot of telecommuting that they do. So they got a whole bunch. I can be in all kinds of communities of practice. So some of these communities of practice get to be quite large. So 1,500 to 3,000 people. Obviously, not everyone can be a very active participant in that, but they can be involved. They can be reading things that are going on. They're looking at global virtual communities of practice to overcome geographical limitations. A word that kept coming up, I noticed it was in the slides that you had about POSCO, and it kept coming up in the meetings we had. Trust was real important too when you're dealing with knowledge management in these communities of practice. The communities of practice are only accessed through an internal network. If you decided this afternoon, you know, I found an interesting talk listening to Dr. Saw, I'm going to go see what's going on at IBM, you can't do it. You can't find out what's going on in their knowledge management. It's only through internal networks. The group leader in IBM is one of the participating communities of practice leaders. So this is something that's got support at the very high levels of the organization. And I don't know, which button did you push to get rid of that the last time? The red one?
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
I forget.
Okay. The level 4 and level 5 communities of practice are the only ones that really, you know, sometimes invite external specialists to join. The early levels, level 1, level 2, level 3, those are all internal. And these COPs support on and offline community practice leadership training. When they go to evaluate communities of practice, they're going to use a capability maturity assessment model that's basically based on those 5 levels that they've got. They'll also use a balanced scorecard and look at the business impact that these communities of practice are having. They're going to evaluate these activities using an index for each stage of that capability maturity model. The compensation for people that are participating in communities of practice is evaluated at the headquarters level, and each group within the organization determines an appropriate amount of monetary compensation. We'll see some of these organizations don't believe so much in monetary compensation as IBM does. And then they have an annual communities of practice symposium where people in these organizations in the communities of practice get together and share their best practices. It looks like a bright future for communities of practice at IBM. They see this as an opportunity to rediscover accumulated know-how and knowledge. They don't want to be in a situation like 3M was in when somebody leaves and we don't have this accumulated knowledge and know-how anymore. And again, it's very important that mutual trust is maintained and there's good levels of collaboration. Some of the lessons learned, multi-membership was something that they talked about. People are involved in multiple CLPs, and they're learning and working simultaneously within these groups. We got this capability maturity model. Compensation methods really focusing not so much on statistics, but on reputation. What's the impact that these organizations are having? Okay, that's about IBM. I want to talk a little bit about General Motors. At General Motors, we met with one person at IBM. We walked in the room at General Motors, there's 10 people. So, we had a little bit different reception there. This Dr. Sammy that we mentioned is clearly the gentleman in charge there. And it was explained to us that at General Motors, communities of practice are about improving product quality, reducing costs. They want to get better market response time. They use communities of practice for problem solving, and they also work on collecting or creating collective knowledge. Some of the characteristics that we saw, very customer-centered knowledge management. And on-demand communities of practice. I can decide this afternoon that I need to start a community of practice. I can do that at GM. With customer-centered knowledge management was really interesting. They've got people who are paid to get on MySpace and talk to customers about how they like their cars. That's where, again, I felt I was behind the times. So since I'm not the last person on the cell phone, I am going to be the last person to get on MySpace. I haven't done it yet, and I really don't want to. But now, I never thought of it, that can be a way to get information about a product. Should Dr. Hitt be getting on MySpace to find out what UCF students are saying about this university? I don't know, I'm not going to recommend it to him. I'll keep him off there too, but that's what they're doing. They're collaborating with other companies and education centers, with other universities. They've got to use the suggestion box idea to get new ideas proposed. They've got something they call a go fast philosophy. They're trying to implement changes very, very quickly. There aren't any fixed steps or procedures that they use. What they'd like to do is have all of their workplaces become innovation centers. That's what they're really trying to do, is make things happen quickly, give a lot of empowerment to the different work centers that they've got. And they want to get ahead. They're not talking about 6 Sigma at General Motors anymore, it's 9 Sigma is what they're doing at General Motors. And again, they're using blogs and forums to share knowledge and I pushed the right button. Okay, the status there. They have 262 best practice development teams that are already formed right now. They have a lot of information for us. Over 4,000 approved best practices, over 1,400 collective knowledges that they've got. They've got over 160,000 pages that people can view in their knowledge management system. They've got a knowledge asset manager. Again, this is high level in the organization. They're saying this is important to us. They've got a knowledge asset manager. They've got a domain view that allows people to kind of keep track of all the knowledge that's being accumulated. They're looking at a collaborative best practice process, and they have an annual meeting and feedback. This idea of annual meetings is something that seems to be coming up again and again as folks get together and talk about best practices within their companies. Knowledge sharing is more important than security, so they're not all that fussy about security. It's a minimum security level for knowledge sharing activities. I still couldn't get in if I wanted to. There's still an internal network, but within General Motors, there's not a lot of security for their knowledge management system. The knowledge workers create know-how, references, and good discussion. They have what they call global subsystem leadership teams. They've got 64 of those. So that's how they're organized, according to these global subsystem leadership teams. So there's not a leadership team for Corvette. There's a leadership team for a door handle. So they'll have another leadership team for trunk latches and so on. So the subsystems of the automobiles are what they focus on. They have about 1,600 members per day that are participating, and in 2007 they had over 4,000 best practices that were identified. Some of the characteristics, communities of practice is one of the tools for knowledge management. So at IBM, communities of practice is at the high level. In General Motors, it's knowledge management that's at the high level. The core of the Global Technical and Engineering Center is the Global Subsystem Leadership Team. That's what makes it happen. They've got 250 what they call subject matter responsible persons and 250 best practice development teams. Each one of these subject matter responsible persons is in charge of one of these development teams. They're trying to identify connections among the best practices. They're gathering documents, work procedures, best practices, and again, they have this annual meeting. It's a very important part of what they do. Evaluation of the communities of practice takes place at the headquarters level, and they focus on what we're calling honorable compensation here, which is really non-monetary compensation. They're trying to find a way to honor people who have been participating in communities of practice and have helped the corporation quite a bit. The future of communities of practice at General Motors, they're looking at personal knowledge management. They want to have a Web 2.0 set up where individual people manage their own knowledge. Some of the lessons learned, they've got cell division type communities. They've got the personal knowledge management concept. They've got, they're promoting knowledge sharing. Oh my goodness. And they've got this extranet communities of practice that include the customers. This is getting on MySpace and talking to customers. That was a very important thing what the Corvette people are doing, as it turns out.
How can I?
Can you can escape? You get something out to it. Ben will shut down.
Have 4 minutes to finish.
Yeah.
I'll talk fast.
Don't you want to see
Thank
the
you.
countdown?
So if 4 minutes.
All right, I'll go through this a little quicker, so I want to save you some time for conclusions. We also went to 3M, and I'll just point out what I think is one of the big differences at 3M. 3M, the communities of practice is really a way of life, is the way I would summarize it at 3M. In addition to having communities of practice that work on things related to their 55,000 products, they also have what might be called affinity groups. They'll have communities of practice that are interested, like my friend here, in tennis. There may be a tennis group that gets together and talks about tennis, but it just creates a culture where people are communicating with each other and sharing with each other, and it just naturally flows into what they do in the work environment. So I would like to pass this on to you to do the conclusions.
Okay. Maybe 2-3 minutes, okay. Thank you.
And I'll get the
lunchtime. Everybody maybe get hungry. So, conclusion. Well, I'm gonna But this is a conclusion about POSCO part. So there is a, let me skip this. No, oh, that's not mine. Can I get mine?
Yeah.
This is yours. I mean, actually what happened, I sent the file to Dr. Wiley yesterday night, and then since then I revised my part, he revised his part, and this morning we didn't have enough time to merge it together, so we have two separate files, you know. So I need my file. So, okay, this is good. Conclusion and future directions. Okay, this is, I think, probably grand conclusion. This is the most important part for today's discussion. Future direction, activation of COCOP. COCOP is a communities of practice, which means, you know, there's a lot of communities of practice, and how can you organize the communities of practice? Because they have to interact with each other. Then, you know, they don't. Sometimes they dislike each other, but that's not good. So they need a kind of cooperation, and then increasing role of external members such as partners. You know, we saw that the basically POSCO is emphasize membership inside POSCO, and then IBM emphasizes some value chain the friends like supplier and customers, and then GM emphasizes partners. Okay? Partners is at the horizontal level. So GM has partners like Toyota, for example, and GM Daewoo in South Korea, for example. So that's external members and theme independence here. This is a little bit. I had a hard time to wording this. Theme independent COP means that we have a COP, and then sometimes interest in theme is changing. So COP right now, if interest in theme is changing, COP just shut down. They shut down COP, but that COP just die. But in theme independent COP is because knowledge is stored objectively. Even though your theme and interest is changing, still COP may be a going concern. I mean, they can continue. Increasing importance of PK and personal knowledge. You may be wondering, well, the COP is this is gone. What's that? Shut down. That's fine. Okay, so that's the future direction. And next slide will show that. What's the research issues here? Obviously, PhD students here, and I'm as a scholar. I mean, obviously, what kind of research interest there? I mean, there are many research interests here. For example, one of the important things how to evaluate COP performance, compensation. I mean, there is a lot of discussion is on monetary compensation or honorable compensation. I mean, that's one big issue. IBM supported monetary compensation. POSCO has monetary compensation. They have mileage system. If you generate But I think 3M, they say they really don't like the monetary compensation. They really gave a warning to us that monetary compensation may mislead your employee. That's one big issue. Obviously, security issue is a big issue here. Security, in any MIS, security is a big issue. Also, another issue is COP is organized vertically or horizontally. Okay, so vertically means COP is formalized in each function. The process and function concept. The function is each department, for example, accounting department, finance department. This is one function. So COP is organized inside that function. And there is another concept, cross-functional, that which is a process. So you can organize test-based COP, it's a cross-functional. But there's another issue, what is a circular COP? Circular COP is, you formalize a functional-based COP, and then it is evolved in cross-functional-based COP, then becomes functional COP, like circular motion. That's another interesting issue. Also, in the future direction,
how to utilize your partners, the entities in supply chain, to formalize your COP. That's very important. You know, in POSCO has a lot of spin-outs and spin-offs. So there are at least 40, 50 companies in Pohang that spin-out companies. And then and that is related to POSCO anyway, because they, you know, there is a joke that if you wrap only the steel products outside the POSCO, you still get $1 billion a year. Okay, I know a company. What they are doing is only wrapping up the steel. From the POSCO, their sales is $1 billion. Not $1 billion, probably. Yeah, probably $1 billion again. I'm not sure of that. So how to connect the entities in supply chain each other under the COP concept. Okay, so I forgot a couple of things that I need to slide, but I think some. Can you revive? Maybe I need 2-3 minutes. That's it. Can you revive it? So maybe I'm sorry that, you know, just bear with me. You know, you have a coffee there and drink there if you are thirsty, and you can have some.
Maybe we can ask you some questions.
Okay, yeah, question and answer session. Okay.
Yeah. I thought your comment about communities of practice and communities of practice was interesting, especially given that IBM they had 150 to 180, and then they go they're evaluating them and managing them.
Yeah.
How do people find anything there? So I think that's a very interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Concept.
Okay, that's it. Another one is virtualization. Okay, virtualization is another issue. Virtualization, because that COP is like IBM. You don't know where they are. Because we visit Atlanta and say, how many employees you have? I don't know, because so many employees here and there in all the country. So even though they don't, so how many manufacturing factories you have? I know one in China like that. They say they don't know, because that's so big and there's so many communities around. So offline meeting is impossible. So COP is based on online, which means is virtualization, how to effectively virtualize. POSCO's case, online community, offline community, and just merge it together. Sometimes they discuss, they have a standard website for the thousands COPs, and then they get together physically sometimes. That's possible because they work in one single place. But like IBM, so many offices in New York and Texas like that, it's possible to get together. So virtualization issue, how can you virtualize your COP effectively? That's another big research issue like that. So,
quick question. You had a slide up there with POSCO, and it talked about the correlation between the leadership activity and the level of activity of the COP.
Okay.
And I was wondering, with these other IBM and other organizations you looked at, do they have measures of their leadership activity relative to the performance of the COP?
They have any data to what you mean?
Like, how are they, basically, you had a slide that mentioned they had these many COPs, and then there were COPs that went away. So at some point, we need to be able to look at the activity level of that COP to say, yes, this is viable, it's doing something, it's moving forward, it's alive, versus the ones that dwindle away. And I just wonder if those other organizations look at their, like you have the five-step model, the life cycle, and basically, are they looking at the leadership activity, or are they looking at a broader, are they looking at leadership plus the members as far as activity level?
I think there are two ways to evaluate COPs. One way is, as you mentioned, that COP is leaders' activities and how active the leaders are. So they have a leaders symposium and thing. I think IBM does have that symposium for offline symposium. It's people get together physically and the COP leaders, and obviously POSCO has. So they look at the leadership of the COP, each COP, to evaluate that. And the other one is you just evaluate the COP members' activity by itself. Like how many knowledge each COP generate per month, for example. Yeah, this is only just my example, but you look at the COP activities, and then well, that's a quantitative evaluation. Qualitative evaluation, even though this COP generates only 2 knowledge a month, this COP generates 20 knowledge a month, but this knowledge is very effectively strategically important for the company, then this COP is better. Okay? That's a qualitative evaluation. So the POSCO right now is evaluation method is transferred from quantitative evaluation to qualitative evaluation right now. So they look at how valuable the knowledge are instead of how many knowledge you generate.
And now with an organization like 3M, they seem like they have different COPs. Like if you have an affinity group, somebody likes tennis, that's not necessarily directly, contributing ideas, but that's contributing to the culture of 3M. So that's something that you might measure a little bit differently.
Probably. Okay.
I've got a question. I have lots of questions. But one of the things I've been reading is Three Magic Letters Getting to PhD. And basically it says that time degree is increasing. I see the PhD production as part of a process. It costs the state maybe $300,000 per graduate, so we need to do this more efficiently. How can this be applied to academia and students are passing this information down from professors to students to peers to make the process faster without diluting the quality?
That's a good question. I mean, so in the campus COP,
Yeah.
in a sense, right?
Right.
Okay. So how can effectively COP ideas apply to academia?
Can
Campus,
be
right?
generalized, implemented.
Responding this?
It's not directly related to it, but in the Wall Street, not the Wall Street Journal, in the New York Times, they had an article, it was on the front page of the New York Times this Sunday, about how people don't really, the younger generations really don't read anymore. And they're used to
Online.
internet. Yeah.
They read online, yes.
Online
That's right.
sources. So in a way, this would fit very naturally into that particular type of an approach where you have the communities of practice. In a way, when you have wikis and you have the student can build the knowledge, I think that's what they're trying to do, which is something I implement in my class, and you saw it. The problem is the knowledge that was created by the students was in many cases problematic. It was wrong. And so, within a university setting, how do you have these community of practice and you have the sharing of ideas, but somehow you have the filtering so that the things that are new and creative and exciting and actually factually correct surface, and the other things that can distract are filtered out. And I guess that's what communities of practice are supposed to do. They're supposed to filter that out.
That was one of my questions. Is this once it's posted, it's always there? Is there a way to delete it? How do you know? How does it get to be a best practice? Does it get to be voted on? Is it half of the people endorse? I mean, I don't know how that happens.
Well, I think that's all about the research issue. I'm saying evaluation on knowledge and practice. So maybe each organization has different criteria that right now is a postgrad, as I told, that from the quantification to qualification right now. So look at the more, for example, the total knowledge from COP, even though the number of knowledges they generate is small, but it affects company's direction or strategical defection. In a larger scale, probably that is kind of regarded as best practice. So, okay, research topics, evaluation method, that's I already mentioned that. External memory, supply chain memory, partner spin-off and spin-outs, I already explained that. COP linkage with the KM and other innovation tools, that's another research topic. What's the role of COP under the umbrella of KM? Well, as Dr. Ryder mentioned that there is a good controversy, which is larger, COP is larger or KM is larger. KM is larger in the sense that COP is only a tool for KM, knowledge management. But COP is larger in the sense that COP it does not only generate knowledge, but also does many things, right? So the COP is larger concept in that case. So, so what's the linkage to other innovation tools? A lot of leadership as a critical success factor, you know. When we asked critical success factor to each company, with the IBM, GM, and 3M, they said, commonly they said is leadership, the management commitment to the COP. So then, I'm sorry, it's a little confusion. Okay, a lot of leadership is the leadership of each COP. Okay? The another issue is management commitment. Okay? That's a separate issue. So a lot of leadership is a critical success factor. Online coordination with offline, obviously online is getting grower, is growing. So online coordination with offline is also an important issue. And security is always an important issue in any MIS area. So, and standard platform COP. Actually, this is our final target for COP. Can you develop standard platform for COP so that any COP can just grab it and use it? You know, that is a kind of a software program, for example, and maybe a standard website, any standard protocol for building COP and managing COP. So we will think about that. Right now, POSCO, they have a common website, so any COP can use in common, but they don't have any COP management protocol. So I think probably we can develop COP management standard platform protocol. Okay. I think that this is, and I don't have, I have the same problem. I use this one without watching. Okay. So there's an interesting argument when I was in engineering school in Seoul, that the student electronics department, electronics engineering, they never understand, they never fixed the television. Right? And the person who fixed television is graduate from technical school or technical high school. Okay. So MIS people sometimes hard to keep up with the high tech, right? Even though we teach high tech.
I got another question.
Yeah.
I was just curious on the security issue. What are the major issues that you saw with security?
What kind of knowledge is accessible to certain people or not, like that? So I think I didn't watch GM, I forgot, but they do not really upload any very sensitive issue, sensitive knowledge. So this is a vertical protection or horizontal protection. Vertically you can protect a certain knowledge from up to level. So maybe managing director and director, they can look at this knowledge, but down level you cannot look at it, and vice versa. In the horizontal level, that's vertical level, maybe horizontal level, certain department, financial department may look at this data, but knowledge, but other department may not. So that kind of issues, security issues are going on.
One of the things I found interesting about the POSCO knowledge management community practice was in your slide you had actual wrench workers participating, whereas with the organizations you studied, they're all mostly knowledge workers with the exception of GM. Do you have a differentiation between knowledge workers and wrench workers, or is everybody participating? And how do you get people whose primary job is not associated with computer?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, COP is organized vertically and horizontally. And when you organize vertically like that, and for a certain function, you need the top level managers and middle level managers and maybe down level wrencher, the technical workers together as a COP for knowledge generator. But if you look at the horizontal level, probably you confine the membership from certain level. You just exclude a certain down level, maybe exclude some upper level. So I mean, that case probably wrench worker, the technical workers is involved in knowledge generation for that.
So do you got them to actually participate
Sure,
in POSCO?
yeah, sure.
They are?
Sure, yes. So in a certain COP. Yeah. So knowledge is enterprise-wide, not necessarily for just like office workers. Is enterprise-wide concept. Okay, any more questions? Okay.
All right, well, let's thank Dr. Suh.
Thank you for coming. Any question, just send the email to Dr. Riley and to me. Then we're gonna provide our materials. We have a lot of backup materials right there. And actually, my laboratory right now is wholly devoted to this project because this is pretty good topic in the next 2-3 years. So we have reviewed many papers right now, and then the PhD students are changing their thesis topics from a couple of years ago we CRM like that, but changing right now to this topic.
That's one thing I noticed, that you moved from, like from GDSS,
GDSS,
CRM.
yeah.
At what point do you decide, okay, we need to move on? Is that a function sometime of the funding that you get from POSCO?
Well, I think several reasons. One reason is the POSCO funding is important. We half of our research money depends on POSCO, but I think we try to reduce the dependency. But that's one reason. Second reason is popularity. It's like a bandwagon effect. Like early 1990s. If you talk about re-engineering in Seoul, you can get a lot of consulting money like that, but not anymore. If you say re-engineering, people don't look at you anymore. So, popularity changing. Actually, that is led by USA. When here is some knowledge is kind of terminology is popping up, it goes to Korea like within a few weeks. Actually, when I was a college student, that takes like 6 months. Right now, it takes only a few weeks. Okay, if new concept is popped up here, that is popped up in Korea like within a month. So that's why we have to change our interest, some project to wise and then popularity wise. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Here's my card. Do you have your card?
I may.
And so I